Today, we're going to be talking all about why you keep getting stuck in conversations in English. Let's talk about it. Hey up, mate, and cheers for finding this episode of the BritSpeakPod today. I hope you're having a wicked day wherever you're listening to this from. I'm doing all right. Thanks for asking. And if you're new around here, my name is Dan. I'm a British English teacher, and I'm here to help you improve your confidence so you can communicate in English. I'm also going to teach you some stuff about British life, British culture, and of course, British English. Now, just before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about this. Are you still struggling to feel confident when speaking in English, even after all of them hours you've spent studying? Do you still feel stuck in conversations like you just can't find the words you're looking for? Well, trust me when I tell you this, mate. I know the frustration, but I also know the longer you wait to deal with the problem, the worse the problem is going to get. But it doesn't need to be this way. For less than $1 a day, you can get access to the BritSpeakMates community, which will help you solve these problems. You'll get access to daily speaking challenges and the 24/7 live practice room. You'll get a community of other people just like you to help you stay motivated. You're going to be able to get answers to your questions from me and other community members. And you're also going to be able to get weekly speaking practice lessons if you go for the VIP tier. So for just $19 a month, you'll gain all of that so you can finally start feeling confident when you're communicating in English. All you've got to do to sign up is go to the link in the description or visit britspeak.co/BritSpeak-mates. That's britspeak.co/BritSpeak-mates. And I hope to see you in there soon. But for now, back to the episode. Cool, so today's episode, we've got quite a lot to get through, to be honest, mate, but this is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be having a look at why you freeze when you're speaking in English and what you can do about it. We're going to be having a look at how to keep a conversation flowing, even if you forget a word. What are you going to do? Well, I'm going to tell you. And we're also going to look at what confident speakers do and how you should copy them. And as always, at the end of the episode, I'm going to be answering your questions. And speaking of questions, today's question is, what is the hardest part about speaking in English? Now, this is going to depend on each and every person, isn't it? Your answer is probably different to everybody else's, but I want to hear what your answer is nonetheless. So put it in the old chat box if you're watching live. Comment on YouTube or Facebook if you're watching after the fact. And if you're just listening, I don't know, send a carrier pigeon or something. I'll get the message anyway, won't I? So that's good. So put your answers in the chat and we'll talk about them at the end. So the first topic in today's podcast then is, why do people freeze up when they speak in English? Now, I often get messages from people like this. It says, I understand English, but I panic when I have to speak to other people. And to be honest, I get a lot of this kind of thing, variations of it. You know, my mind goes blank when I have to speak to other people, or I'm too nervous, or I'm too shy, or whatever it is. And basically, it comes down to the fact that you need to train your brain to respond naturally. Oh, good, wasn't it? Train your brain. Sounds good. So you need to train your brain to respond naturally. Now, speaking is a skill, right? Just like any other skill, it needs the right kind of practice if you want to improve. You can't just hope for best. You've got to actually do the right things. So today we're going to be talking quite a lot about this. Now, the first thing is we need to talk about, why does this happen? Why does your mind go blank? Why do you freeze up when you're trying to speak? You know, because speaking shouldn't be that difficult, but for some reason it is, you know. And there's a lot of reasons. So the first reason is that speaking is not automatic in another language. It's something that you have to work on. And probably the reason this keeps happening to you is that you haven't taught your brain the right things yet. You haven't made those connections in your brain yet. And this is a big problem for a lot of people because understanding English and speaking English use different mental processes. Your brain does different things for both of those two activities, right? And that basically means just because you understand English doesn't mean that you can find the right words when you're in a conversation. Just because when somebody tells you a word, you understand it doesn't mean you can then use it. They're different things. Like maybe you've heard of the concept of passive vocabulary and active vocabulary. Passive vocabulary are words that you hear, and when you hear them or when you read them, you recognize them. You're like, yeah, I know that word. I've seen that word before. I know what it means. And active vocabulary are the ones that you can actually use. You know, you open your mouth and they come out. You can find them in a conversation. Now, active vocabulary and passive vocabulary, not the same, mate. They're a bit different. And that's kind of the problem, you know. Don't know what that accent were. I thought, on a side note, I'll start adding some little voices and little impressions into my podcast. Immediately rethinking that. But there you go. So yeah, just because you can understand stuff doesn't mean you can use it. And you have to kind of train your brain to be able to do the two different processes at the same time. So speaking is definitely not automatic. It's something you're going to have to work on. Another reason this happens is people translate in their head too much. And this is a problem that you're not training yourself to think in English, right? When you first start learning a language, you end up using the translation method. You know, you learn that, I don't know, this word in your language is this similar word in English, you know. Let's say in Japanese, for example, I can say, okay, apple in Japanese is ringo. Okay, so I translate. Every time I hear ringo, I go to English and think apple. Okay, got it. And that's translation. And that's how we start learning any language. When you get to a point, this starts causing more problems than it's worth. And you have to start thinking in the language that you're speaking. Otherwise, you're doing a lot of work. Think about it like this. Somebody says something to you in English. So then you translate that into your own language. And then you think about it and what it means. Okay. And then you have to think about how you would respond in your own language. And then you have to translate that into English and then say it. That's a lot of bloody work, mate. That seems like a lot of effort to me. I don't know. Like, as somebody who enjoys the simple life and doing things as easily as possible, that seems like a bad idea. So even though it's hard to force yourself to think in English, in the end, it's going to be way better for you. So, I don't know, the extra steps from translating and translating back, and seems like it's going to take too long, mate. And that ends up causing you to hesitate. And that's a bit of a problem as well. You know, if you're pausing all the time while you translate things, it's like, have you ever done that when your internet's slow and you try and load a website and you have to wait more than 2 seconds? And you're like, oh my God, why is this so slow? Imagine that in a conversation. It's not fun, is it? It's not fun. So yeah, translating in your head is another reason that you keep getting stuck. And another one is, I mean, this is pretty normal, isn't it? You get nervous. It's natural. You know, anxiety is one of those things that just kind of makes your mind go blank. You know, the more pressure you put on yourself to be perfect, the harder it gets. I know that's kind of counterproductive, but that's how it works, isn't it? You end up in fight or flight mode if you get too anxious. You know, if you ever dealt with anxiety before, you know that eventually it reaches a point where you're like flight or fright, flight or fight or freeze, which in these cases can happen as well. And it makes it harder to think and calmly access the words that you know. So all three of these things, you know, eventually end up causing the problem of you getting stuck in a conversation. And that's not cool. That's not what we want. What we want is for you to have nice, flowing conversations. But that's why this happens. Now, a lot of people kind of just accept this as it is. You know, oh, I'm always going to translate in my head, or I'm going to get nervous when I speak. That's normal. But I'm going to tell you why these things are a problem. The first thing is that if you keep freezing up, you're going to eventually not enjoy conversations, which means you're probably going to avoid having conversations, which means then you're not going to be able to connect with people you meet and you're going to end up feeling pretty lonely. And that is no bueno, which I think is Spanish for not good. I don't know. I don't know Spanish. But that's what the problem is. Freezing up makes you feel bad. That means you're going to not want to speak, and that means you're not going to be able to speak to people, and you're going to have no friends, and you're going to live under a bridge like a troll. And that's not cool. That's not cool at all, mate. So yeah, that's one reason we need to fix these things. Another reason is that the longer that you wait to start practicing speaking, the harder it's going to get to start practicing speaking, because the more you put it off and the more you put barriers between you and practicing speaking, the harder it's going to get, because the problem's going to keep getting bigger and bigger in your mind. I don't know if you've ever felt this, like when you've got a bit of a worry about something, then you think about it and you think about it and you go over it and over it again. Eventually that problem becomes so massive in your mind, way bigger than it actually is. It can be very easy to put yourself off taking any action because you've blown this problem up in your brain. Like, we don't want to do that, mate. So the best thing to do is start practicing now and stop wasting time, yeah? Another reason that this is a big problem is that even if you know English well, yeah, you've got a decent English level, people might assume that you don't understand just because you hesitate too much. You know, if you're thinking and pausing and thinking and pausing all the time, the other person might be like, is everything all right? You know, do you understand what I'm saying? And then it can hurt your confidence because you feel like everybody's questioning your understanding. It's not cool. And I don't know if you guys know this, but thinking time in English should be a maximum of 3 seconds. Like, more than 3 seconds of silence, it's not cool. You know, you need to be doing something. You need to be saying something. You can't leave 5-10 seconds blank. That's such a long time. You know, 10 seconds to wait for somebody to speak is an absolute lifetime. 3 seconds is a long time. So imagine, you know, you're speaking to somebody and you're like, please wait, sir, while I find 5 to 10 seconds while I search for a word. Like, nah, mate, I'm all right. Let's crack on. So yeah, I think that people might assume your English level is lower than it is if you hesitate a lot. And I think another thing that you need to consider is that studying more words doesn't equal confidence. We talked about it before, but you might start doubting yourself, right? And when you doubt yourself, you start to think, okay, I need more English. I need more grammar. I need more vocabulary, blah, 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 blah. And then you'll spend more time studying than practicing. And we all know that confidence and fluency comes from action, not reading. So yeah, that's a big problem. And these are 4 things that you need to avoid if you want to stop freezing up in conversations. Now, all this is pretty doom and gloom so far. Don't worry, mate. I'm here with some positives. I'm going to tell you how you can fix the problem starting today. Now, first of all, we've got to think about training the brain. That's what we're doing here. You've got to retrain your brain. And the way we're going to do that is by speaking every day. Every day we're going to be speaking, even if you're alone, right? And if you're not sure how to do that, I've got something called the Speaking Practice Planner. It's got exercise ideas. It's got a planner so you can track your progress. It's available for free. The link is in the description and the show notes. Click the link, put your email in, I'll send it you straight away. It's got everything you need to get started, yeah? But anyway, we're going to use that planner or your own techniques, whatever it is, and we're going to do that in order to practice speaking every day, even if you're alone, even if it's just, 10, 15 minutes a day. That's all we're looking for. And that's going to give you some benefits, right? The first benefit we're looking at is that you need to speak. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds weird. If you want to get better at speaking, you've got to speak. And you do that by regular, consistent practice. Okay. You also need to repeat the same exercises and the same skills over and over again, consistently over a longer period of time. You need to do the same things over and 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 over again until it becomes second nature. Think about like driving a car. The first time you drive a car, it's so overwhelming. You've got so much stuff to concentrate on, like which foot do I put on which pedal and which gear am I in and all that kind of stuff. If you've driven for 3, 4, 5, 10, 18, 20 years, don't even think about it. It's just automatic. And that's kind of what we want to happen for speaking. So you're going to do the same kind of exercises over and over again. And you're going to track your progress over a long period of time. Like I mentioned earlier, the speaking practice plan. It's also got a tracker so you can track your progress over a period of time. And I think tracking your progress is important as well. So yeah, you need to be repeating things over and over again. Like if you go to the gym, you don't just pick up a weight once, do you? Like, oh, I've done one bicep curl. That's a job's a good one, innit? I don't need to do any more of them. Yeah, you probably got to do, I don't know, 300,000. I don't know how many you got to do. But you got to do a lot of them, basically. So yeah, we're going to need to do some repetition. The next thing is you need a structured, organized plan. You need some structure to the madness. You can't just do random things and be like, well, I spoke to the wall for 38 seconds today. That's good enough. Is it though, mate? Is it? Oh, yesterday I went outside and I shouted at some daffodils. All right. Great. But how does that help? It doesn't, does it? We've got to have some logic to the madness. You know, speaking practice that's structured and it's consistent and it's built towards a goal and it's organized. That's what we're looking for today. And like I said again, the planner is designed to help you plan this out. It shows you how to schedule the practice for this week and what you need to prepare and shows you how to track it and make sure that you're showing up every day consistently and you're working towards a goal, right? Which is important. The next thing that you're going to need is exposure to native level speech as much as possible. TV, podcasts, YouTube, people around you at the bus stop, whatever it is, these things, the more you're surrounded by native speech, the more you're going to understand and the more you're going to, like, on a subconscious level, try and mimic it. And even further than that, do things like shadowing. And I think we've done a full episode about shadowing before, where shadowing is you listen to a native speaker and you repeat it. You copy it like a parrot. You just try and mimic it as closely as you can. And shadowing, it's covered in the planner as well. And there's a full episode on the YouTube channel about it. But yeah, do some shadowing. Copy native speakers. That's going to help you build your confidence and speak. And it'll help you develop that flow, which will help you stop getting stuck in conversations as well. You're also going to need consistency. And I'm talking every day. You know, you're going to build them muscles in the gym. You're going to have to do it consistently. And the same is true for speaking in English. Now, we're talking, you know, if you've got 15 minutes every day, you know, 5 minutes in the morning, 5 minutes at lunch, 5 minutes in the evening, you'll make progress really quickly if you show up every day for 90 days. If you show up every day for a year, you're not going to even seem like the same person. It'll be like an overnight transformation. It'll be unbelievable. You know, like when Bruce Wayne puts on his Batman costume. Basically, same thing. And yeah, I think that's really important. And the last thing is you're going to need a destination that you want to get to, as in a goal or the thing that you want to focus on. And you're going to need a plan to get there. Now, the way we do this is that you need to track your practice, right? And I don't just mean, okay, I've done my practice today, check. What I mean is you've got to do some reflection. You've got to think logically about what you practiced. How did it feel? What was easy? What was difficult? What do you need to do better next time? So reflection is a big part of it. And in the practice planner, there's reflection sheets. So you can write down how you felt and what you think went well and what you think you need to work on next time. And all of these 6 things, you know, speaking every day, repeating the skills over a long period of time, structured, organized practice, native level speech that you can emulate, consistent daily practice, and a destination and a way of tracking it. All of those things are going to help you when it comes to getting over this problem. And I did mention it a few times in there that I've got the speaking practice planner, the free guide, yeah? But there is actually something else that I want to show you today. Now, I offer something called the Speaking Practice Pack, and this is a 30-day email course. So every day for 30 days, you get an email from me, and it includes everything you need to practice speaking for less than 15 minutes every day. So the way it works, you get an email from me and it'll say something like, okay, today's exercise is shadowing. And there's a video from me explaining exactly what you need to do and give you some tips and tricks and go through the process and show you exactly what you need to do. It's also going to give you everything you need to do that exercise, all the shadowing materials, all the articles, all the podcasts, whatever we're using to practice, it's included in the email for you. And it's designed to get you started. Sometimes these things, the hardest thing to do is get started. And the first 30 days are already planned out and organized for you. It's delivered directly to your email. So all you've got to do is open your email and do the practice. That's it. It's going to be the easiest way to get started. And it's available right now for $29. That's less than $1 per email. What can you do with $1 these days? I don't know, you can't even buy a coffee. You can probably buy, I don't know, a Snickers bar for $1. So you could buy 30 Snickers bars and, feel bad about yourself. Or you could buy this and feel good about yourself and practice your speaking. The link is in the show notes and the description. It's called the Speaking Practice Pack. So check it out. I think you might find it valuable. Now, we talked a little bit about, the reasons people get stuck and some things you can do to kind of resolve it. But the next thing I want to talk to you about today is how to handle the situation when it happens. Because even if we work on it, it's still going to happen to you sometimes, right? So when you are speaking and your mind goes blank and you can't find the words you need, what do you do? What do you do? And I think everybody knows the correct answer in this situation is panic. Oh my God, I don't know what to do. Everything's terrible. Calm down, mate. Calm your nerves. But basically, I'm going to teach you what to do instead of panicking. Yeah, because panicking is probably not going to help us out. So first of all, let's talk about why this happens. Yeah. So one of the reasons that we kind of get stuck and we end up going blank, you're trying to find the word, your brain's blank, you can't find any of the words you're looking for. And one of the reasons for this is you spend way too much time focusing on memorization, focusing on remembering full expressions and grammar rules and vocabulary. And you spend way too much time and effort memorizing stuff. And then as soon as you don't have the exact suitable phrase loaded up in your brain, it's like, when you try and go to a website and you type it in and it's like, this website does not exist, can't be found. It's like that, but in your brain. So I want you to think about it in a different way. Like, just because you can't find the exact word doesn't mean you just have to I don't know what to do, does not compute, right? And the problem is that most people become dependent on, in this situation, I say this expression. I just, I don't think about it. I just, like a robot, just spitting the words out. And most people just got one way to explain everything or one way to express everything. And if that doesn't work, they're just completely stuck. And this happens because of too much memorization. Now, another issue is that you don't have any backup strategies. Like if plan A doesn't work, there's no plan B. So plan A didn't work, so I just give up. All right, cool, good job. Now, if you are in this situation and you don't have a backup plan, then you just freeze and you just panic and you're like, oh my God, say something, brain, load, do something. And what I want to tell you is that natives forget stuff too. Our brains are pretty stupid as well. Like we forget stuff. Words go missing. You know the word, but then suddenly you can't find it for some reason. But you know what we do? We find another way to keep the conversation flowing. Like talking around problems is a big skill that you need to learn, and you need to learn it too. Now, once again, you might think, yeah, but I can just memorize more things, or, I'll come up with a plan B and that's problem solved. Well, this is why you need to think a bit deeper about these things. Now, if you stop mid-sentence, how do you think that makes the other person feel? They're probably going to be like, well, this is a bit weird. It's a bit awkward, isn't it? Maybe they might even lose interest and just be like, okay, see you next time. Bye. See you, mate. Cheers. Thanks for coming. You know, that kind of thing. I mean, we're being a bit over the top, but it could happen. You know, if I'm talking to somebody and every other sentence they pause and think for 30 seconds, I'm probably going to abandon ship pretty quick. And we don't want that, do we? We don't want that. We want the opposite of that. And you might also find that you feel embarrassed. If this happens to you all the time, you're going to start feeling embarrassed. And embarrassed is like the opposite of confident. And you know, confident people are good at conversations. You know what embarrassed people are? Not good at conversations. And eventually you'll stop trying because it's embarrassing and every time it doesn't go well. And you'll just give up. And that is not cool. That's not cool at all. So we don't want you to start avoiding speaking situations altogether. We want you to embrace it. And that's why you need to fix this. You'll also find that in professional or social settings, pausing too often or for too long can make people think that you are unsure about what you're saying. Even if you know exactly what to say, they might think like, this guy may be a bit dodgy. Maybe he's lying. He's thinking too much about what he's saying. Or maybe they'll think like, oh, this guy, his English is not great, you know. I mean, it happens. It's a sad fact of life. Like sometimes people judge your English skills based on what's in front of them when it's not the truth. And, you know, maybe you're just nervous. But they don't think about that. They're just like, he pauses a lot when he speaks or whatever, which is not cool. And of course, if all of this stuff just continues to happen and we don't try and fix the problem, your confidence is going to fall off a cliff. And you're really going to feel like, I can't do this. I can't speak English. I'm just going to give up. No, we don't want you to give up. We don't want you to feel like you can't do it. We don't want you to avoid speaking. We want you to be able to speak confidently to people and make friends and improve your work-life balance and get a promotion and I don't know, whatever it is you want to do in English. I want you to be able to do all of them things. And that's why I'm going to tell you what you should start doing today to fix these things. Here's 3 techniques that you can use next time you get stuck, right? The first is what we call the talk around it technique. Now, the talk around it technique is when you can't find a word or you don't know a word, you find another way to deliver that message, right? So let's, for example, say, I don't know, I forgot the word microwave for whatever reason. I just can't find that word. I could be like, oh, you know, it's like it's in your kitchen. It's like a box that I put the food in and it heats it really quickly. It's faster than the oven. It doesn't use fire. It uses like electricity. And yeah, you know, you can, especially good for like defrosting food. Dan, yeah, you mean microwave. Yeah, microwave. That's what I meant. Can do it like that. Or maybe I forgot the word umbrella and I'm like, oh, you know, it's that thing. You take it, it's like a stick and you carry it around and when it's raining, you push it and it keeps you dry. Yeah, you mean an umbrella. So always finding an alternative way to deliver a message, even if you can't directly describe it. Like, you know, you find it in a kitchen and it's used to heat up food. Okay, that gets me closer. It's kind of like a box, but made out of metal. Okay, and like what kind is it? What is it? It's a tool. It's a cooking equipment. Like, what is it? And find other ways to describe it. And this is a skill that's kind of hard to do. It takes a lot of practice. Maybe you guys have heard of a game called Taboo. When I was younger, we played this game and you get a card. And on this card, it's got a keyword that you're trying to describe. But you're not allowed to say this keyword. And it's also got 5 other words that are related that you're not allowed to say. And the idea of the game is that you've got to get the other person to say the key word without using any of the words on the card. It's called Taboo. And it's absolutely amazing for training this skill. So yeah, basically as part of my speaking practice pack, one of the practice skills in there is taboo, where we go through and we practice describing items, in the 30-day speaking practice pack. Now, that's one way, learning to talk around problems. That's one technique that you should start developing today because it'll help you next time you get stuck. The next one is time filler words technique. So earlier, I told you that maximum amount of quiet time while you're thinking is 3 seconds. Any longer than 3 seconds and people are going to think there's a problem. And we don't want that. So you've got to fill in that gap. Now, if somebody asks you a question and you need to think about it, that's okay. But you've got to say something. You've got to fill that silence. You can't just leave silence while you're thinking. And that's why you should learn and develop the skill of using time filler words. Now, when I say time filler words, these are just words that don't really do anything. They just fill the gap. Things like, yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, let me think for a second. Well, it's kind of like, when and we're kind of doing nothing, but taking a long time to do it. So there's a bunch of these things. If you, look online or whatever, or just listen to native speakers, notice what words they use and what expressions they use when they're, like stalling for time. Try not to be like, because it doesn't sound very good. But if you're like, yeah, that's a good question. I've never thought about it that way before. Now that I think about it, it's quite a complex situation. It's kind of like this. And, I spoke for like 3 or 4 seconds there while I was thinking. I think that's a really useful skill. So time filler words, that's something else you can do to give yourself a chance to think a little bit more about what you want to say. And the last thing is quick thinking practice. Now, conversations require very quick responses. Like I said, 3 seconds. And it's hard to do that. And that takes practice. So you're going to have to do practice that forces you to think quickly. And there's loads of exercises. But in the speaking practice pack, the 30-day email course that I have got, we do things like summarizing. So you take a text and you've got to summarize it in your own words and make it shorter. Paraphrasing, you've got to say the same text, but in different words. And taboo, like we talked about earlier, the taboo game where you explain a word without using certain words, right? These exercises are all designed to help you express something in a different way to normal. And the more you express an idea in a different way, the more normal that's going to become. So when you do get stuck, you're more able to navigate that situation, right? And like I said, the 30-day speaking practice pack, it's like an email course that I run that I mentioned earlier. It's got all these kind of things built in. It's going to teach you how to talk around it with the taboo games and time filler words and quick thinking practices all included. And like I said, it's available for $29 if you're interested. The link is down in the show notes, so just check it out. And yeah, I think it's one of those things, if you train your brain to quickly respond, it'll help you to stop hesitating when you forget a word, and everything's going to be a little bit better. And that is 3 techniques that you can use in this situation. So yeah, I think that's kind of the second part of the problem, isn't it? Like, we now understand why we get stuck in conversations, and now we know what we can do when it happens. But the next thing I wanted to talk to you about today was what we can learn from people who are more confident than us. We've got an expression in English, fake it till you make it. And if you're not feeling very confident, we can work out some steps to make us feel more confident. And you know what the best way to do that is? If you want to build confidence, follow in the footsteps of people who did it before you. Look at what confident people do and copy that. That's probably a good way to go about it, isn't it? I'm not going to copy people that are not good at what I want to do. I'm going to copy people that are good at what I want to do. And in this case, we want to be confident at speaking in English, so we're going to copy people who look like they're confident at speaking in English. Now, let's kind of do a side-by-side comparison, all right? So let's say we've got 2 speakers. One of them is hesitant, nervous, anxious. The other one is confident and feels more fluent, right? So this little guy here, this red box, he can be the hesitant one. And the green one with the sunglasses on, he can be confident. He looks pretty confident, doesn't he? And yeah, this is basically what it looks like. So let's kind of break it down. Now, a hesitant person is scared of making mistakes, right? They're worried that they're going to say the wrong thing. And that's not cool. But however, the cool guy, the confident guy, he doesn't worry about mistakes. He just tries to be understood. He uses different techniques. He uses, talking around problems, and he tries as much as he can to get the message across, whether he's right in his grammar and his vocabulary or not. His goal is to deliver the message, not to do it perfectly, right? Let's have a look at the hesitant guy. He overthinks everything. He worries if he's used the best word for that situation. Is it the perfect word? Did he use the grammar perfectly? Did he choose the correct grammar pattern? Did he conjugate everything correctly? And then probably goes back and corrects himself quite a lot because he's worried that he didn't do it correctly. However, the confident guy don't really think about that. He just wants the conversation to flow nicely. He wants it to keep moving. You don't want to get stuck while he tries to say the same sentence 4 times. Just keeps going. Lets it flow. Confident people don't correct themselves. They don't worry. They just keep going. And that's one of the hallmarks of a confident speaker. Now, a hesitant person studies a lot. They spend a lot of time, textbooks, apps, that kind of stuff. Whereas a confident person practices a lot. They take the knowledge they've got and they apply it and they use it every day. And that's why they're confident. Because we all know, we've said it before on this podcast, we'll say it again. Confidence comes from taking action, not from reading about taking action. So yeah, practicing a lot builds confidence, and that's why he's confident. Yeah, and the hesitant speaker will often correct himself. They'll say the same sentence 4 different ways to make sure they've said it perfectly somewhere in there. Whereas the confident person, they don't do that. They just focus on communication. They focus on being understood. They focus on making sure they can understand the other person. And they focus on making sure that the message is delivered and understood. And the hesitant speaker will translate from their native language back and forth into English, whereas the confident speaker will think and speak in English at the same time, making it easier, meaning he hesitates less, and he looks a bit more confident. Now, from those 2 people, you've got the hesitant person who's scared of making mistakes, that overthinks everything, that studies way, way more than they practice, and they always correct themselves, and they translate from their native language. Or would you rather be the confident person who tries to be understood, has nice flowing conversations, practices a lot, focuses on communication, and thinks and speaks in English? Now, for me, it seems pretty obvious which one of them 2 things is better than the other. Given a choice, I think I would obviously choose to be the hesitant speaker. Said nobody ever. Of course we want to be the confident speaker. So now we can see the big differences between the 2. We can kind of work out what we need to copy and what kind of things we need to be doing regularly for this to make sense. Now, these are the things that I think you should copy, okay? Now, a hesitant speaker will study and wait for confidence to come. However, a confident speaker will speak before they feel ready, right? And that's the key. You've got to speak before you feel ready, because confidence comes from doing, not the other way round. You don't do something after you feel confident. You do something and therefore you become confident, right? And there's no such thing as feeling ready or the perfect time. It doesn't exist. The perfect time was 2 weeks ago. The second most perfect time is right now. So get started. And even if you practice on your own, even if you read a book out loud, if you do some shadowing, whatever it is, do it. Do it every day. And that's going to build your confidence. So make sure you start speaking even if you don't feel ready. That's the first thing you should do. The next thing is stop worrying about mistakes. I must have said this about 3 million times. And I hope you're sick of hearing me say it, because if you're sick of hearing me say it, you've heard it enough times that you should understand what's wrong. But just in case you're not sure, a hesitant speaker will overthink and self-correct everything. We've discussed that. Whereas a confident person will focus on getting the message across, whether it's perfect or not, right? So you've got to train yourself with the goal of, I want to deliver the message, not I want to have perfect grammar or amazing vocabulary or a British accent or whatever you tell yourself that you need to feel confident, because it's not true. So you're going to have to train yourself, even if you make a mistake. Train yourself to keep going. You don't need to go back and correct everything. If you're really unsure if they understand, ask. Don't just assume they don't understand. Ask them. Like, explain something like, do you understand what I mean? And they'll say, yeah, mate, of course I do. Cool, let's move on. And like I said, we're aiming to be understood, not perfect. Say it with me, everyone. Perfection is a lie that keeps you stuck, and we're not trying to be stuck. We're trying to move forward. So that's why we're not trying to be perfect. We're just going to try. That's the aim of the game. The next thing that you should copy from a confident speaker is keep going. Keep talking. Even if you forget a word, even if your mind goes blank, we don't freeze. We don't stop to search for the perfect word. We don't give up halfway through a conversation. We find another way to explain it, and we find another way to deliver that message. You know, we're talking about talking around unknown words or using time filler words to fill a gap while we're thinking, or gestures, using words like who, what, why, where, and when to explain what you're trying to say. All of these techniques really, really useful to making sure your conversation flows and you can keep talking even if you forget a word, right? Now, the next thing that you should copy from confident speakers is control your speed. Now, hesitant speakers tend to speak really fast because they're nervous. And I think on some level, they also probably feel like if I speak really fast, maybe they won't notice the mistakes. Okay, but if you're just mumbling really fast and speaking like this, you what, mate? Oh, what? So calm it down, mate. Calm it down. And take a breath and go at your own pace. Now, confident speakers control the pace and they use pauses effectively and they speak at a comfortable pace for them. And that's important. You don't need to rush. Slowing down can often make you seem more confident. And learn when and how to pause naturally. Like, where do native speakers usually pause in the sentences? We don't just put all the words together in one big long sentence and just keep speaking until we run out of breath. And then we do it again, and we do it again, and we just keep speaking like this until we can. It doesn't work, does it? So work out how native speakers use pauses effectively to make sure that they are able to speak for longer periods of time without having to speed up and run out of breath. Now, if you're not sure about this, what I would recommend is record yourself speaking. A big part of the speaking practice pack and even the speaking practice planner, you know, the free thing that you can get in the link in the description, the thing that helps you plan out your speaking for the week, and it's got the planner and the tracker and everything. A big part of this is recording yourself. A, so you've got something to listen back to after a while to see if you're making progress. But B, when we speak and we listen to it in our own head, it's not the same as what other people hear. So we kind of need a way to listen back to ourselves to see what other people are hearing when we speak. And you can record yourself and you can notice, are you speaking too quickly? Are you speaking at a nice pace? Are you pausing in natural places? Recording yourself and listening back to it will help with that. And the last thing that you should copy from native speakers, not even native speakers, confident speakers, is you need to build muscle memory through practice. Now, speaking in English is a little bit different to a lot of the other skills because it requires the physical aspect of the language. You've got to move muscles. You've got to force certain actions. You've got to move your tongue in certain ways. And at first, there'll be certain movements of your mouth that are more difficult. There'll be certain sounds in English that don't exist in your language. And it'll be difficult for you to actually make those, words regularly. And the way we do that is we train the muscles in our mouth and we build muscle memory so it becomes automatic, right? Now, Hesitant speakers, they only speak English when they have to. It's like, oh God, I can't avoid speaking in English, so I guess I'll have to do it. Whereas a confident speaker makes it a daily habit. They speak every day, even if they're on their own. They'll find a way to practice speaking in English every day. So they'll speak out loud, even if it's just describing what they're doing, or they'll have a conversation with themselves in the shower about what they're going to do today, or they'll record an audio diary, or, they are part of the BritSpeakMates community, which is my community that I launched last month. And in there's daily speaking practice exercises. There's ways to connect with other native speakers, other confident speakers, and I'm in there as well. So there's natives in there as well. But yeah, joining conversation-based practice like in BritSpeakMates is a great way to practice every single day. And you should also make a structured speaking plan and have organized activities every single day and go one step at a time. That's one of the things that you should think about when it comes to making yourself more confident in English. And that is basically everything that you need to know about copying from native speakers so you can become more confident when you're speaking. Now, that were a lot for us to cover today, right? And I also want to see what you guys have got to say about it. So right at the beginning, I said, what are some things that you struggle with in terms of speaking? And we've got a great comment here from Tefo. Tefo is also a member of the BritSpeakMates community, and he's done the 30-day speaking practice pack, the one that I was telling you about earlier. So let's see what Tefo's got to say. I'm just going to pull him up a little bit here. There we go. So Tefo said, for me, the hardest part is finding the right and natural words that are used by native speakers, especially if you know loads of words and synonyms and you're not sure which ones to use. And this is one of the things we mentioned earlier about confident speakers versus hesitant speakers. A hesitant speaker will worry that there's the exact right word for that situation. Whereas a confident speaker will like, this word will get the job done. That'll do for now. We don't want to be using incorrect words, but, if we've got, for example, Tefo asked me this week a question about things like getting accustomed to, or finding your feet, or, various expressions that mean the same thing, settling in. Now, they all basically are much of a muchness and do the same thing, right? There's no one better than the other. So don't worry too much about which one you choose, because they're all going to do the same thing. And I think that's really important thing to take from this. So yeah, really good. Let's see what else we've got. Dong Dao says, appreciate much. You're welcome, mate. I hope this advice is useful. And Serge says, hi, Dan. Serge, yeah. All right, mate. How you doing? So yeah, really good. That's what I think for today's episode. Once again, before I leave, I've got a couple of things to tell you about. We've got the speaking practice plan. It's got ideas for exercises that you can use to practice speaking every day. It's got a tracker so you can keep track of your progress, and it's got sheets so you can reflect on what you need to work on. It's totally free. The link is in the show notes. And if you want to go one step further, we've got the Speaking Practice Pack. It's a daily email course for 30 days, gives you everything you need to complete a speaking exercise every day, and it's available for $29. The link is in the description. So hopefully you got a lot of value out of that today. But that's everything for this episode of the podcast. And I'll be back again next week with some more. But until then, look after yourself and have a good one. See you there.